Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm Stephen Conway. With me, of course, is Jeremy Finestone. We're contributors to the Fight Game Media Network. We are here on what has turned out to be a rather historic day, and we are looking at some New Japan wrestling action. We're going to take a break from checking our phones and the news to go ahead and talk about Best of the Super Juniors. We are coming down to it. Only one show left in block play of what I think, Jeremy, and I hope you think so too, has been a refreshing tournament. Just terrific action all the way through. It's had twists and turns, a lot of drama going into today's show and going into tomorrow's. We've had a lot of complaints about New Japan, and a lot of them have been very legitimate. This has renewed my faith a little bit in this product. It has been so much fun, the Best of the Super Juniors tour. I hope you feel the same way.
I think the word I'd use is delightful. Like, it's not going to change anyone's life, right?
Yeah.
This tournament, if not, like, it's not a renaissance in junior heavyweight action. They're just doing the stuff you do, and they're doing it well. And there is a passion to the booking, it feels like, and a creativity. And yeah, Steven, I've had a great damn time with this tournament, and it has been a breath of fresh air. It has been utterly refreshing. And I'm glad that we get to talk about that. I hope that it doesn't trump any other news that might come out today.
Oh, I see what you did there. We have, it does not solve New Japan's problems.
No.
And I don't believe for one moment that this tournament means that the ship has been righted. I do mean that on this one tour, they got it correct.
They're confident back. They're like a sense of like, okay, this is what I've been looking for.
There are still issues with other companies, issues going on with champions who aren't around, all that stuff. And all of that's going to hit us square in the face at Dominion, I think. And when we talk about Dominion, we're going to have to discuss a lot of that. Of course, next week's going to be the Dominion preview show. Mm-hmm. And but for now, let's just enjoy what we've gotten to see, which is really just a crew of junior heavyweights who are pushing each other and testing each other in a performative sense, in that they are making each other better. No one wants to have the worst match on the show. I keep saying that. Well, when the bar goes this high, you start to see very special things. And I just think we've seen good match after good match after good match. And the House of Torture stuff has been muted. And even Show has had some terrific wrestling matches. And yes, there have been shenanigans. It's House of Torture. But overall, it's been real nice. I just feel
the floor has been really high. It's the best way I can put it. It's like
that's a good way of saying it.
The ceiling may not be like through the roof on this. It's not like we have Will Ospreay level matches at a junior.
Right.
It's not happening here. But the floor is so high that you are not disappointed with the lack of effort and the lack of skill that's in the ring. You know, it's like these are a lot of guys on the come up, and a couple of them that are on the cusp, and a couple that are like here and ready to go. And so, you know, there isn't a Taguchi this year. And I think, unfortunately, for Taguchi, the tournament was better for it, you know, unless they were going to really put some seriousness on him. But I think we've all been so burned by the butt stuff that it's just like you can't not think about it and associate with it.
Yeah.
And we didn't need that in this tournament. You needed a level of seriousness and relevancy that's like, hey, these are the best junior heavyweights in the world, and this is why we will show you that. It's a shame Mustafa Ali wasn't in this tournament. I feel like he would have fit right in on it, but for whatever reason, he's not there. But the quality was at the level that like Mustafa Ali would be fighting to have the best match rather than being the guy to automatically have it.
Or Leo Rush, for that matter. I mean, that's how high the quality has been. Flaming Shark says this Best of Super Juniors has pretty much been pure NJPW at its best. Also, first time in forever, but I'm glad to be back. Well, we're very glad you're here.
Hello.
I was really happy to see your name pop up in the chat.
Flaming Shark.
Yeah, Dunstan is here, of course, and he just says, "Does Kevin Knight have to join War Dogs?" I feel like that would be uninspiring. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get to all that because in due time, we're going to discuss who may be joining War Dogs there. They've been dropping hints. Jeremy, I think what we ought to do here as we approach this is to go separate the blocks rather than by show. And Colin is here too. Great. Oh, we got the starting lineup here. And thank you to all of you who are watching here on YouTube, listening to us later on a podcast. Really appreciate you joining us here. And we are done with block play in A. A block is done. And I figure we go through that and get us to the A block semifinals. And then we can kind of walk through the B block action and see who they might end up in the semis with. Okay. And yeah, McCollum says, I almost forgot about the podcast. Well, you always join us. You're with us anyway, but we appreciate it. So why don't we do that? Let's go through the A block, and I will take a look because it started off the week that way. Sunday in Yoyogi, which is a neighborhood of Tokyo, which is fun to say, Yoyogi. And what we will have is A block action. And now this in Yoyogi, there were both blocks, but we're gonna go through the B.
I separated the card from the A block matches and the B block matches. We'll jump back to them, but this is what I think is the order in which the A block matches happen throughout the day.
Okay, so what we had was so in Yogi we had Kushida. That I guess that's a B block. So we'll go to it's okay.
Oh man,
Hayata and Fujita would be the first A block match.
There we go.
So we have Hayata, of course, visiting from Noah, and Kosei Fujita, who is one of the very best young junior heavyweights out there. Hayata came into this match with a short record right there, but he did defeat Fujita in this one. And this kind of put Fujita on a bit of a cold streak going through. Neither of these guys ended up in the mix here, but Hayata 5-2 going in. Excuse me, Hayata is in the mix. Fujita is not. Pardon me, I got that backwards. So Hayata, this win put him on 10 points and tied for the lead with El Desperado. So he came into this thing with 8, and they mentioned it even on commentary, kind of a quiet 8 points.
Absolutely.
And like Hayata, it's one of those guys just like, oh, he's 2 behind, he's 2 points behind, he's 2 points. Oh, he's tied for the lead. It was like one of those. And Fujita's having a great tournament and wrestling in excellent matches. This was another good one, but it was a victory for Hayata, and that set him tied for the lead with Despe. So that was that first match, and then it went to Blake Christian and Bushi. This one also.
Question: was this the first match that he had after he was stripped after the GCW title?
I believe it was. I don't know what's going on with that, and I mentioned to you that I don't pay much attention to GCW at all. It's not usually my bag there, but it's something that I guess did. I don't know what went on with that, but
I believe
word got out that they had a show, and he was scheduled to be at a show that was the same day of the semifinals, and people said, well, that's a big spoiler. And then I just thought, I don't know if it is or not, but
I dug into this just a little bit because I feel like it's kind of our responsibility in this. Apparently GCW has a battle royal for the championship on this upcoming weekend, the weekend after, like June 4th, that it's possible that Blake Christian could make it as a surprise entrant after his final match on Friday. It is possible that he could show up, win the title, and then it just becomes a GCW angle, and they're just kind of playing with that and just go back and forth. Entirely possible. If not, he's going to be in the GCW plans, the Ring of Honor plans. It could just be a way to get the title off of him while he's got bigger and better things going on, but it doesn't really matter that much.
So what we have then was Christian. He defeated Bushi. Bushi, of course, is kind of on the lower end of the point scale, and that got Blake to 10. So now we have, at that point, after that match, we had 3 people at 10 points, and Desperado and Titan matches were still to come. So, I guess that actually made it 4 because Desperado and Titan still had matches to go. Hayata had made it to 10. Christian had made it to 10. So we're getting a pretty big logjam up at the top of this block right here. So up next was Yoshinobu Kanemaru and Titan. Now, I just mentioned Titan was sitting on 10 points. But Yoshinobu Kanemaru got the upset win here. He used a low blow as he was trying to take the mask off of Titan, and that's the beauty of a heel like Kanemaru. One, he can still wrestle very well. The other side of it is you can always have him cheat to win. It doesn't hurt Titan to lose to him in that sense if you do it that way. And so that brought things to an even bigger logjam. Titan was not able to separate himself from the pack. More people on 10 points than if he had gotten the victory. Kanemaru, of course, trailing behind a little bit. So at this point, Jeremy, we've got 4 people at 10 points and still more to come.
they were doing an excellent job of creating the tension while making it clear, like, you knew where the stories were going and who was heading in what direction. You know, like, we had spent probably 20 minutes last week kind of mapping out the scenarios of what would be the most dramatic tension, who would be the guys going. And I kind of feel like we hit it pretty close to the mark when it came to, like, where Kanemaru where it would be best for him to win a match, despite the technical aspect of the match and what they do in the match. They're all fantastic. They're all to serve a purpose so that the numbers line up. And it just kind of felt like this was all trending in the directions that we saw with who was lined up to move forward. But this felt like making sure that the numbers lined up more than anything else.
The best match I thought of the night was next, and that was Kevin Knight and Clark Connors. Now, Connors was on 8 points, so he could join that group up there at 10 if he won. These two had terrific chemistry. Of course, they have met at the LA dojo in the past. They've trained together. They've worked on a lot of matches. So this was excellent stuff. Kevin Knight did end up getting the win. He managed to get his spike DDT there. That kept Connors from reaching 10. It also got Knight up to 8. So we have this glut of guys at 10. And now we have two very dangerous guys, Knight and Connors, who could believably beat the top guys in a one-off match at 8 points. So the drama's really building right here. And more than that, hints dropped, Jeremy. In the post-match comments, we had some uncharacteristic things said, where Clark Connors, not particularly subtly, mentioned that there is an opening in the War Dogs since Alex Coughlin had to retire, and that Kevin Knight might be just the thing they're looking for. And Kevin Knight didn't say no. Said something along the lines of, I hear you, and something like that. And so perhaps a little bit of mutual respect between the two, hinting at the idea that Kevin Knight could eventually join up with the War Dogs. Your thoughts on that before we move on with the rest of the block?
First off, I thought the match was fantastic. If you look at it, I want to go back and see their first match with each other, because this feels like both of them graduated from whatever, like, intermediate to, like, full-fledged I am New Japan through and through kind of. That was the kind of match that they had tonight, where it was like it wasn't the young guys on the roster. It was too established. Kevin Knight, Clark Connors. They talked about their history, but that didn't feel like what this match was. It didn't feel like these were two young guys that were just finding their way. This felt like two guys that were there and had arrived and were actually meeting each other once they had both hit that one certain plateau. As for the War Dog thing, I don't know, man. It seems like a giant red herring to me. I don't know a whole lot of heel faction groups that basically call their shot of who they're going to have join a faction. You know, when Drilla Maloney joined, it was completely by surprise. It was through subterfuge. I still, you know, like a guy like TJP is honestly someone that I would very much see going and switching, especially since he has like the run right now. I don't know. There are things to all of this that just because Kevin Knight was mentioned, I feel like plans are now afoot. Things are actually happening. But I do not believe that Kevin Knight is the guy that we should be looking at as the next guy for Bullet Club. Now that they're talking about it, chirping about it, the plans are in motion. What do you think?
It feels like some misdirection, doesn't it? It feels like we're going to sit here and take a look at this Kevin Knight thing, and we're going to be staring at him, and that's all to put some of the heat on Kevin Knight, while the person that's actually going to turn and join the War Dogs kind of. I can see something along the lines of, we're waiting for your answer. The answer is no, and then the actual guy who's turning jumps Knight. You know what I mean? There's something along those lines there. I don't know who that will be, but I have a feeling that Knight, this is just a little too clumsy with the whole, you know, we have an opening. You look pretty good. Well, I'm not saying no, and then he joins. It doesn't have the juice, does it?
The killer instinct for Bullet Club?
I bet he would be a terrific heel. I mean, you know, if this were a developmental territory, say like NXT, it would be time to turn him heel and give him a run there to see how he does with that. That's kind of what NXT does with guys, like, well, we'll turn him heel and we'll be babyface and all that stuff.
He's so Ricky
I am
Steamboat
fine with him doing what he's doing. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I also think if you put Knight in a situation where he needed to be a heel, he could pull it off.
He's so Ricky Steamboat to me. Like he's just
really?
he's so
Kushida is. I can't see Kushida.
I see them both. Like I see Kevin Knight as like, this is a guy that everyone can get behind, like every night babyface, like main event babyface at one point. Like I see so much potential with Kevin Knight that like 3 years, I don't even think he's a New Japan level of like potential. He is can't miss, and I don't think you waste time just seasoning him for a heel run. Just at some point later on when he's there, like you can do it. But right now, he is so good as a babyface.
Shark has some thoughts. He says, I kind of imagine it would be a relatively young guy to join the Bullet Club War Dogs, whether Kevin Knight or more likely someone else. I doubt it would be a TJP type, he thinks.
What is
the way the story has gone, I agree right now. I don't think the time is now for TJP on that either.
What is the TJP plan? Because it just seems to be like, you have a certain spot in New Japan, and we are making it clear it is this. Like, you are not this good, and you are not this bad, but you are right here.
I think something else might be going on with TJP. We'll get into that as we go on there. But I don't know if it's a War Dog run for him either. He came into the match, by the way. He's in the next match. He needed to continue his rally, and he was facing El Desperado. Now, this is a match where, not a whole lot can go wrong here. These two were both excellent in the ring. So he was on TJP on 6 points looking to get 8. Now, he said something earlier in the tournament in post-match comments after he had lost to Bushi, which was, I thought, the end of him. But it turns out that he is rallying here. And he said that what he said, I'm trying to remember the exact quote. It was something like, if I don't do it, he'll do it for me. And I kind of, what does that mean? And then we found out today what that means. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. I had a feeling, but I didn't.
Come on.
He came in on 6 points, looking to get to 8 and continue that run. And he managed to win an absolutely fantastic match with El Desperado. It really built with big moves, excellent near falls. The crowd was on TJP's side. That's how well they worked it. He hit a Mamba Splash after battling through everything like the knees, pinche locos, numero doses. It was just excellent stuff. The victory for TJP put him in that pack at 8 with Knight, with Connors, only 2 points behind the top guys. It kept Desperado on 10. So that would end up putting all the marbles on his match with Hayata, which we're going to discuss. So leaving Yoyogi, Hayata, Teton, Blake Christian, and Desperado were all on 10. Connors, Knight, and TJP on 8. So most of the block, absolutely within striking distance of the semifinals right there. That is a wonderful piece of booking.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about the fact that a guy dropped in the other bracket and they still managed to navigate making it work it's not easy, man. And I'm sure somebody took a loss here or there that wasn't supposed to, but just the cooperation here, everyone's on the same page. Everyone wants to put out their best because they know the urgency of making sure that people know it's like everything else might not be going right in New Japan, but you can count on year after year these tournaments being bangers, and you can come back for them.
Venkin is here. Good to see you, Venkin. He says TJP is winning Best of Super Juniors. He might. We're about to talk about how that went today at Korakuen Hall, which was the show took place early in the morning. And first, Kanemaru was in the ring against Clark Connors. Now, Kanemaru was 3-5. Connors is 4-4. Now, this match was all kinds of fun. It didn't last long. But it was clever. So they jumpstart a course. We're two Bullet Club guys, so they're gonna cheat. They spill to the outside of Korakuen Hall, which was not full. The camera, the hard camera side, facing the hard camera. I mean, the bleachers, not full at all. So Wednesday, today's Thursday. Pardon me. That's Thursday in Japan still, and it was a Thursday night there, and they just didn't quite fill the joint like they did. But all the orange seats were full. Strange, but They went up into the orange seats, fought up there, even did a suplex on the concrete up there, which couldn't have been pleasant. They worked their way back down. Now, as they're doing it, of course, the referees counted. There has been a running gag that Connors and even other heels and sometimes baby faces are grabbing poor Katsuya Murashima and using him as a literal human weapon. Sometimes they're body slamming him on people. In this case, he decides he's going to Irish whip poor Murashima into Uncle Nobu. But like they say, don't con a con man. Nobu sees it coming and reverses the whip, sends him crashing into Connors, slips into the ring, and Connors is counted out, thus eliminating him officially from here. I enjoyed it. I got a kick. Thought it was fun.
It was Kanemaru's got some of the sneakiest wins, but he's the old man. Remember, he got TJP in 2 minutes in the opening of the tournament. So like, yeah, he's not going to give you bangers, but you will be entertained. And for the comedy that you got in his matches, he still managed to deliver entertaining work. The suplex was definitely painful. The timing on that 20 count was utterly fantastic. Yeah. And then afterward, he just absconded to the back, and Clark Connors managed to spear a referee as a result because Kanemaru wasn't there anymore for him to get punished.
Yes. And they're telling a bit of a story that Connors is a loose cannon. He got himself disqualified in his match with Desperado for ignoring the referee's instructions. Now he
did the same stuff last year, man. Like, we go back, there's the same things. Disqualifications cost him a tournament.
Yeah. It was the tag team tournament. Though last year it was no. You're right. He did do something.
Yeah, he had another scenario like that in the best 15 years last year.
No, you're absolutely right. He did. Up next was Bushi and Kevin Knight. So Bushi is out of the running. He's 3-5. He was wrestling Knight at 4-4. Knight needed a win to stay alive in the tournament. And as the match went on, he did this move on the outside that I don't think I've ever seen before. He's running along the outside of the ring. He jumps up, lands on one foot on the apron, did a step-up drop kick back down to the floor. It was like Spider-Man. Step-up drop kick.
It was dynamic. Very dynamic. You're going to see a lot of people stealing that move real soon.
So smooth. I mean, it didn't look like he was trying to do it. It just looked like he did. Does that make any sense? It doesn't even look like he was trying.
It reminded me of like a double or nothing match where somebody had a guy, his leg folded up on the outside apron, and then they dropped down and he dropped his leg onto the apron. But instead, it was just one guy doing like a box jump onto the ring just so he could drop kick the guy. But he did it with 1 foot, and he did it from a standing position.
Phenomenal. So as the match went on, to give you an idea of how these guys are pushing each other and nudging each other along, Bushi did the dive off of the aisle in the orange seats, jumped off over the tunnel onto Knight in the concrete. Even Bushi doing these things. And but Kevin Knight's downfall came when Bushi threw Knight over the top rope. He began selling his knee hard, and then that led to falling prey to Bushi's new knee lock for the submission loss. So with those first two matches, they took guys who were just on the periphery and eliminated them. So now Connors is out. Knight is out. Bushi gets that win to get him up to 8 points, which is not a bad showing in this tournament for Bushi these days. And he wrestled well. So I'm happy that Bushi stepped up right there when they needed him to. And there was a
tournament, man. He showed up to work, and he put in a little extra pepper and spice on the last night.
There was a lot of talk about the War Dogs thing, which is another reason I think it is a misdirection play, because Walker Stewart and Chris Charlton, who are both together, of course, when they're in Tokyo, and they were talking a lot about this. So again, I feel like we're trying to beat the drum on that one just so that we're not looking out for what's really going on. So that's another example. When the announcers talk about something that's about to happen, almost certainly won't in a situation like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right.
I do not think if we're putting some finality on it, I will be very surprised if Kevin Knight joins the War Dogs, but it would be a welcome spot for him. He's certainly a heavyweight. He looks like a heavyweight to me.
So it would surprise us, yeah, I guess. And nothing's impossible, but it would surprise us. Up next was TJP versus Teton. Now, they had set this one up on Sunday, big time.
That stage comment.
And on stage comment, but where TJP's speech after beating Desperado was all about how Titan, I've wrestled you in Best of Super Juniors, Super Junior Tag League. I've wrestled you in Costa Rica. He mentioned Mexico. He said, and I haven't been able to beat you yet, but I must do so in order to advance in this tournament. So if that's not foreshadowing, I don't know what is.
I remember watching the backstage comments, and he just listed all of them off, and I couldn't remember if he did it in the ring or if he did it in the backstage comments, but he was just listing off all these matches. He did it. He was just listing them off, and I was just like, yeah, you're beating this dude.
So they telegraphed the finish a lot here. So he did come out as the Aswang, though. He had the mask, he had the special outfit on and things, but they had a really good match. And I really enjoyed it. Titan, of course, one of the best luchadors out there. He is one of a very long list of super talented guys working the CMLL shows in Arena Mexico week after week. And Titan hit the Immortal, that is the double stomp. But part of the Aswang's character is that he may kick out of things that TJP wouldn't. Like this whole character and this mindset kind of gives him this extra juice. He doesn't. The Aswang is supposed to be a supernatural mythical character from Filipino culture. But he doesn't have superpowers in that sense. It just seems like when he's in this mindset of the Aswang character, he can come back from things. And it reminds me, Jeremy, instead of it being the Fiend, which was what I was worried about, I did not want another Fiend thing. It reminds me a little bit of when Keiji Muto would go Great Muta on us back in the day. So Keiji Muto and the Great Muta used the same moves. They didn't wrestle differently. They didn't be. They behaved a little. The body language was a little different. Maybe they would try to play up the creepiness of it. You know, sometimes TJP will just like drop his arms.
The spooky factor was elevated.
Yes, but the moves were the same. That's how Keiji Muto wrestled the Great Muta. Like, so what I mean by that is he would put the paint on, he'd put the purple pants on, and he would do the same moves that Keiji Muto did, but they would have a little more malevolence to them. They would hit a little harder. He could come back from a little more. And that is what the Aswang reminds me of. So if he's going to do that, I'm kind of okay with it. Like if we're not going to try to go crazy with this, that supernatural things are happening, and that this is just TJP going into beast mode. Okay, all right, I'll listen. You know what I don't want is him wrestling like he's a different person out there. I just don't like that. Anyway, Titan put up a dive, and as he came down, he was misted by the Aswang. So TJP got the mist in the eyes. Then he hit his knees. Then he hit the Mamba Splash, and that only got 2. So we had the Immortal, which only got 2, surprised the crowd. Mamba Splash only got 2. That really surprised the crowd. But he did manage to hit the double knees to the back of the head to get the 3 count. TJP beats Titan, and he goes into the final day, waiting on results from other matches to figure out where he landed. But in the running.
Yeah, no, and just once he hit the amount of points in which he matched everyone else, narratively, you can't have there's nothing to, he proved that he is on the level of everyone else. The way that this story was written, you could almost tell where they were going with the rest of it, and you just kind of had to see it through. A lot of the time in the past, when you do these block plays on the last night, it's only the last 2 matches that really matter, but every so often New Japan likes to switch it up and really elevate the stakes and involve all 5 matches or all 4 matches. But it requires very careful math in order to do that, and very little errors or issues leading up to that. So we saw in the B block that kind of reared its head, and you have a better idea of who's going what, but this was a masterclass in taking a guy to the brink of not being able to advance and then getting him from that underdog story all the way to the front. At this point, he doesn't need to win the best of the Super Juniors. Just being in that class of 4 that makes it forward is a big spot for him and gives a little bit of credibility for whatever direction he has next.
Yeah, so a terrific match again. He's just been wrestling really well, and this has been fun and very intricate stuff going on right here. So after TJP and Teton, we had Blake Christian against Kosei Fujita. But before we get to that, actually, Flaming Shark has some thoughts about TJP. So before we
I
move
have
on
some
to
more
TJP,
thoughts about TJP that I was thinking about too.
Okay. He says, as far as TJP goes, I don't think it's too surprising that it isn't going way too far given this is New Japan. I think they found the balance of giving TJP some sizzle without losing the steak. That's a good way of putting it. And Venkin has some thoughts too, that like there's a more contemporary. I went back to a New Japan version of this, but this is basically his demon, his Finn Balor demon. He says he's basically doing the Finn Balor shtick now. Yeah. I suppose that's true, and that's a more contemporary one. I just related it to something I'd seen in New Japan before.
Yeah.
But you're all correct. I think that's a good way of putting it. Go ahead.
So the as long doesn't work outside of big shows. I do believe that. Like here in Korakuen, it was tonally like it took me out a little bit, and I don't blame anybody for that. I think it's just you had to do this, and this was part of the story, and you're taking chances and experimenting, but you need to do something with the lights. You need to do something a little bit different than just like a spiritual Filipino creature that has taken over TJP just walks to the ring normally like everybody else. It's just it's a little weird for me. So with that, and then when you're in the match, I still see TJP. Like I don't see the as long as much as I do TJP expanding his comfort levels of what he can do in the ring and finding this new character, I guess is the best way to put it. He's still finding it. And so I am not completely locked in on what he's trying to do with it because I feel like he's not completely locked in on what he's trying to do with it. And so just give it some time. I am being critical, but cautious that this can still work. But I want to be fair that like, if you see it and you're like, what the heck? I'm like, I'm with you. I am trying to have an open mind to it, but I do have some skepticism on how something that is somewhat supernatural, spooky, cinema related, how it can be transposed onto the New Japan product without feeling out of place.
Okay. And, the thing with TJP also, Dunstan mentions New Japan doesn't have the production value to push Oswald to that level. Yeah. It needs to be done carefully for sure, or else it gets kind of silly. But it also took Finn Balor a little while to get the demon down. That whole demon thing started because Finn Balor just liked super elaborate entrances for his big matches. So there were times when he would come in as Hannibal Lecter with the mask, and he's on a cart being wheeled out there, like in that scene, that famous scene with Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. There were others before that. And then he did the demon thing where he had his mouth and neck painted like it was a big mouth and things. And that everybody just went ape crap for it and thought it was the greatest. And he just thought, okay. And so he used it again. But before it was just something different each time. And then he dialed it in slowly. So, and the demon thing being a different Finn Balor or a different Prince Devitt and all that. That's a WWE thing. He didn't behave differently before that. So again, it just takes a little time. And Venkin just says Finn Balor in NXT was goated. Boy, they did a great job with him in that company. That was NXT. That the Ryan Ward Triple H NXT did a hell of a job with him. You're right. That was
absolutely,
yeah. After he'd been a legend in New Japan. So there you go. Blake Christian and Kosei Fujita. Well, we want to talk about somebody that's having a great tournament as Fujita. This was his final block match. And Jeremy, this reminded me a little bit. I think Fujita is basically having the same tournament Kevin Knight had last year. What I mean by that is not scoring a lot of points, but consistently having one of the best matches on the card. This year, Knight is still having some of the best matches of the tournament, but he's winning more. It's one more year, a little more experience, a little bit more respect from the audience, that type of thing, and he's scoring more points. I think Fujita next year will score more points than he has this year, but the performance has been absolutely outstanding. So I think he's like 1 year behind Knight in that sense. Like this is the year you go, 3-6 or, that 4-5, that type of thing. And then you get to the winning record stuff next time. But his job was to come and have good matches and put guys over.
He has a bright future, man.
Oh my God. So Christian was on 10 points. And you kind of had a feeling what would happen here in this one. I thought this was a trap game for Blake Christian. And it was a terrific match. Fujita managed to hit the abandoned hope which he hadn't done much of in the tournament. He hit the Abandoned Hope, which is that kind of a suplex into a cutter. And that kept Christian from going to 12 points and brought us down to the final match. So excellent stuff. And again, another case where somebody who is one level below in the standings, or a couple levels below in this case, manages to be that one guy that they can't quite get past. You know, it's a trope in these tournaments that somebody loses to someone slightly below them on the ladder to keep them out of the playoffs, and that's how it worked out here.
The majority of them come down to earth at the end of the tournament, and Blake Christian was no different.
Yeah, and Flaming Shark mentioned.
Go
ahead. I'm sorry. No, Flaming Shark just mentioned Fujita is already one of my favorite wrestlers in New Japan. He's a couple of years away from winning a Best of Super Juniors in the belt for sure. I mentioned that too. I thought that in 4 years, this guy's going to be having Match of the Year candidates, and it'll be for the IWGP Junior title. He might win a Best of Juniors in 2 years, but I think in 4 years, people are going to be talking about Kosei Fujita as one of the best people in the industry. Sorry, go ahead.
In 2 years, I think he's going to be the star of the Super Junior division, if not the champion. And props to Blake Christian, man. Like, he's been in the Best of Super Juniors before, and he's come off as a kid, and I did not get the feeling that he came off as a kid in this tournament. He filled like that speedball kind of guest role very, very well. And I was glad to see him here. And I just want to give him his credit for that.
Yeah, no, he's been very, very good. And so with tiebreakers, that meant Desperado and Hayata were in the main event here. They could, and I thought this was an interesting twist here. So they could have both gone through. If they had gone to a 30-minute draw, they would have ended up with 11 points if they'd had a draw. But of course, they wouldn't do that. They're at least honorable warriors, and so they wrestled for it. But it would have been an intriguing thing for them to tease the time limit.
Sandbag to 30.
That's an awful long time to go. So we didn't do that one. But math-wise, they could have just kind of theoretically. Had the bell ring, sit down in the corner, cross their arms, and look at each other for a half hour and move on to the semis. Thankfully, that's not what we got. But instead, we got a terrific match between these two. It was one of the best in the tournament, as a matter of fact. Both of these guys know how to work a match. Both these guys know how to work a longish match, and this was long for a Super Juniors match. They kicked out of each other's finishes. You know how Desperado does these things for the most part right now. It's not that there's a Desperado match in the way that there's an Ishii match, but Desperado has worked that New Japan style very well, of the slow build to somebody hitting their secondary move, which leads to the finisher starting to be exchanged, and then the near falls and the kickouts, and he does all that very, very well. And this is another example of it. Hayata certainly knows how to do all this. The timing of it was all excellent too. They knew exactly when to go into things. Hit a super pinche. So the pinche loco, the butterfly, pulled him up and turned into a pile driver, then hit pinche loco on Hayata to win it finally. The crowd was going wild for the near falls. This is they got pretty loud by the end of that match. And I was thinking about this, Jeremy, after a lot of Noah fans have complained about disrespect toward the Noah wrestlers, and that the New Japan people have pretty much dominated their meetings and all that. And it's true. This is the way to treat him. He gets all the way to the last night of block action. He's in there with one of the best guys in New Japan. He has a fantastic match. He comes that close and loses in the end. Yes. Doesn't go into the semifinals. No. But no one could walk away from this tournament and think Hayata isn't on that level.
I certainly thought he was a better wrestler than I've seen before after this tournament, especially this match. I was like, they created the controlled environment in which they could put Desperado and Hayata as equals with each other. And now when you see Hayata, you think him as a guy that could take Desperado to his limits. Mission accomplished.
Yeah. And that's what's been missing, I think, sometimes from that Noah New Japan relationship, is making it look like they are threats.
And they got to do it in a way where Hayata didn't lose the title. And now, it's like Hayata and Desperado can have a match for a junior heavyweight title. I think that he has over in Noah at some point.
I think it's the national title over there. The national. But I mean, yes. I mean, you could absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Though, it's like,
sure.
Here you go.
He has a couple of challengers now for that thing coming out of that, should they choose to go that direction.
Why don't you do that match all together? Why not?
Maybe they will. But yeah, this is terrific. And TJP ended up winning on tiebreakers now. So once that came down, he had beaten everybody else that was on 10 points during his late block action winning streak. So even though he lost starting the tournament, he ended up defeating all the other guys at 10 points. So at the end, and I was very relieved because these were the two that I predicted to move through to the semifinals off of this one before the tournament started. I don't think I might be lucky enough to get there with B, but I predicted Desperado and TJP. That's what we have. Desperado in first, so he will face second place from the B block.
I had it the other way.
What's that now?
I had TJP winning the block and then Desperado squeaking in, but I'm still happy with having the two right guys.
There you go. And Venkin says he sees Desperado above the junior division thanks to Moxley. So, well, yeah, but he's one of the best juniors out there, and I think he's good at carrying that along with Hiromu. So we have, there it is, Desperado, 12 points, Titan, TJP, Blake Christian, Hayata, all on 10. And then on 8 points, just behind them, Connors, Kanemaru, Bushi, and Knight. The lowest score in the whole thing is Kosei Fujita with his 6, and came out of it still looking better than when he went in it because of the quality of his matches. So just applause on this one for Geto or whoever put this thing together along with him. This was so well designed. A block, just thumbs up all the way. Well done.
He had a plan and he had backups in case they did not go according to plan. That Akira stuff, pretty tremendously devastating. Apparently not nearly as bad as it was led to believe at first, so that's good.
Not out for 6 months or anything. Good. Yeah.
The more I think about it, the more I thought he was going, and he was going to be one of the people going into the next round of B block.
This is the block that actually could go according to plan because A block had 2 substitutions in it and an injury all through it. So B block got to be a little bit trickier as it went on. So we ready to move on to that?
Yeah, I think I have B block ready correctly this time.
Okay. As we went into the 26, we're going to back it up again to Yogi. So we had a bunch of people on 8 points leading the block going into that show. So Taiji Ishimori, Robbie Eagles, Drilla Maloney, Kushida, and Hiromu Takahashi were all on 8 and leading things. The first one here was, as you can see there, Ninja Mac and Kushida. Ninja Mac, this was a great match here too. It was a really impressive run for Mac. A lot of fun acrobatics. Fans really had a good time with this match. And in the end, he managed to sneak in a pin during the scramble and beat Kushida. So some of Kushida's early tournament momentum was being halted here. And Ninja Mac keeps Kushida at 8 points.
I loved Kushida's shock that Ninja Mac got him on this. And I thought that was a clever bit on his part because Kushida had to come down to earth given where he was in this whole tournament. And, I didn't expect it to be Ninja Mac to do it, but hey, good for him.
And with that, we went on to Sho and Dragon Dia. Now, Dragon Dia has also been a lot of fun to watch. He's had some really good matches. He's on 0 points, though. He has yet to score. And he was in there with Sho when we kind of knew that wasn't going to go well for him. But Dia's job is just to have those fun matches, put guys on. He's almost a young lion, really, in the way he's being presented.
Yes, that was all I was going to say.
Yeah. But he is a danger on the last night for Kushida, though. I think he might get a consolation victory on the last night there. But he's facing Kushida. Both of them are out, I think. So, but yeah, this was Sho defeated him, and that just keeps Sho on the brink. Sho is one whose booking really had to change around because I feel strongly that his match against Akira on the final night was supposed to be the one that kept him out of the semifinals. And instead, he has to get those forfeit 2 points. And so he had to be removed from things before. So I really feel like they probably had to change around some of Sho's victories. And therefore, the point totals, that has that down. Else has to get a win that they weren't going to get. No, so
like 8 points, it was super weird, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So he's not wrestling in the morning. He's got the forfeit, but he's also out of things. So we'll go into that. Up next, Hiromu Takahashi. Oh no, you got Ishimori and Maloney. Was that the next one? Probably was.
Apparently, I had that one next.
Yep, there was. Never mind. Ishimori and Maloney both went into their match at 4-2. So we mentioned that they were part of the group of people on 8 points. Crucial one. The loser would be in pretty bad shape. This was another really good one. They had Taishi kind of go through the Bullet Club gauntlet at the end. 3 members of Bullet Club in this side of the bracket. And so you have a House of Torture, a War Dog, and whatever Ishimori is. OGs, I guess. But in the end, he did what he's been doing in a lot of these tournament matches, hitting bloody crosses suddenly. And he got a bloody cross on Drilla Maloney and picked up the victory. So Maloney doesn't have to go to the semis or even threaten to at this point. I mean, he's junior tag champ. That's really where they can use him. Ishimori, one of the very best. So I was happy to see that he's going into that last day in the mix. And he had one more match between this and what we're going to talk about tomorrow. But good match, and Ishimori got the victory.
I got a question for you here.
Okay.
Is Drilla Maloney going to be a huge star? The way he carries himself.
He's really good, but I'm not sure New Japan thinks of him as like a number 1 singles in either junior or heavyweight division. Yeah. I can see him being a really, really good guy that's at the middle to the top third of the card. Does that make sense? I feel like upper mid card would be his ceiling in the way New Japan would think of him.
Like, there's something about him that I think you can do something with at a top level, both look and skill. And I'm just, Gabe Kidd's there too, but you see Maloney and Gabe Kidd like got that beater look, but Maloney actually has like, and I don't want to, he has a heartthrob look about him that you cannot deny. And even though he looks angry and all that stuff, he's got the hair, he's got the physique, he's got the look. You keep an eye out for this.
You can talk too.
Keep an eye out for it. Is all I'm saying. Is like there is a formula to this, and you can make money with Maloney.
Okay, all right. Well, I like the guy. I do like.
I do too.
But Ishimori moved on to 10 points.
Yes. How about this match?
Oh boy, this one was really good. So before we get to this one, DOUKI moved on to 8 points on the Akira forfeit. So it was DOUKI's night off right there. So you don't need a graphic for that. But DOUKI did move to 8 on the forfeit by Akira. So he joined the crew that was 1 behind. Well, 1 victory behind. Hiromu and Robbie both went into this one 4-2. This match was fantastic. Robbie worked the knee hard. Hiromu fought to survive it. A lot of it was Robbie working his way into the Ron Miller special, trying to submit Hiromu. But he did get the Ron Miller special. Hiromu barely struggled to the ropes. That was a terrific, dramatic struggle there. A couple of times it looked like he might have to tap. In the end, Hiromu simply got a desperation roll-up on Robbie to win. So it was not he didn't come back with a time bomb and all that. It was that he was in pain. His knee was killing him. Robbie was inches away from submitting him. He managed to get a desperation roll-up to get the win and move on. And that kept Robbie back at 8, but moved Hiromu up to 10.
Robbie Eagles wrestled a perfect match and lost. That was the story of this. And he did. This was a beautiful match to watch. It told an excellent story. And as it was going, you knew exactly what was going to happen. And it did. And from that point on, Robbie Eagles has been a changed man in this tournament.
He's really been good, and he came out of this one with a little bit of a darker mood. He was very, very angry with himself, with Hiromu, and all that, and he swore to take it out on the Young Lions in his next tag match, and he certainly did. So that was.
Let me ask you this, Steven.
Okay.
If you spend all your time doing things the right way and you don't get the result that you want, what do you do next?
Well, you might start doing things the wrong way. My question about that is, though, if you're inferring what I think you're inferring about Robbie, maybe, however, both Fujita and Robbie have gotten wins over the junior guys that are junior tag team champions, and I think they're in line for a shot. Now, whether something happens after that, if they don't win it, is another thing. That might be part of the story, that perhaps It doesn't work out the way he'd hoped to, his title shot, and that sends him over the edge a little bit. They could be telling that story, absolutely. But I think in the meantime, we're going to get a title match in there soon, don't you think?
I hope that we get Fujita and Eagles versus Maloney and Drilla, but I can't
really
promise for sure that it will. And, you know, you need to start circling a couple of guys that could be defecting to Bullet Club, and Robbie's one of them.
Well, but that's the irony.
Be a red herring, though.
That's the irony. Remember, he was brought in by El Phantasmo as a member of Bullet Club. He's been in almost. I mean, maybe the gimmick will be that he's eventually in almost. Now? I was about to say he was in Bullet Club, then he left and went to Chaos. Then he went over to TMDK. So yeah, a little bit of everything there for Robbie.
He's commitment shy. Interesting.
All right, so that was the end of that show right there, and Hiromu did the big speech on the mat afterwards, and saying that he was too tired, to get up. So he did most of it while either laying or sitting down on the mat. Plus, he was selling the fact that his knee was absolutely killing him going into the next to last day. So B block one show behind the A block is the way the schedule worked out. And we had May 28th in Shizuoka. Now, there weren't any A block matches, singles matches. They all wrestled the prelim tag. So May 28th in Shizuoka, it was Ishimori and Hiromu leading at 10. Would one of them trip? So first, Ninja Mac and Dragon Dia. Now, this was so much damn fun. And it was two people that are out of the race, but terrific acrobatics. Like we mentioned before, Ninja Mac, formerly in Cirque du Soleil, working for them. Dragon Dia, all of his flying just looks effortless. And I really enjoyed this match. I just thought it was a really fun one to sit and look at, even though it was fairly low stakes for the tournament. Ninja Mac got the win.
I thought it was a great spotlight for both of these guys. I love Dia's facial reactions to Ninja Mac landing and a couple of other things. I thought that was a lot of fun. I didn't because an match you go out of your way to see, but if you're a completist, you won't be disappointed by checking it out.
I'd love to see more Ninja Mac in New Japan going forward. Would love to see that. So I'd like to see him back for Junior Tag League. I'd like to see him back in other places. And after that, we had DOUKI and Kushida. Now, they were 4-3. So they were one off the lead. So that's the next one, I believe. Yeah. And it was a biggie in this case. So they worked a lot of submissions. Of course, that's been the style that Kushida has been working in this one. He's been a lot more grounded, but still exciting, still working through that hoverboard lock, finding ways to work that arm, damage the arm to set it up for the hoverboard lock. And of course, DOUKI has the choki, the Italian stretch. And in this case, DOUKI got the DOUKI choki on Kushida. Big struggle, but in the end, Kushida actually did have to tap out, and DOUKI got the victory. So again, Kushida is starting to cool off late in this tournament, while DOUKI is hanging in. He's the stalking horse. That's the role he's playing right there. The one that is just barely behind the leaders and trying to sneak up on him. As it turns out, DOUKI is one of only 3 people that are eligible for the semifinals in the B block coming out of this victory over Kushida.
I can feel it. I can feel the DOUKI choki. In all honesty.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, Venkin says that Ninja Mac is Vikingo level, and it doesn't surprise me. I mean, his stuff, like he just it really flows, and he's found a way to work those acrobatics into things that look like wrestling moves, which is my issue with Phoenix, is that he just does stuff that doesn't even look like that. There isn't even a logic for why we're trying. None of it's logical. It's pro wrestling and things, but I think they're a cut above stuff like that, where Phoenix will just randomly run across the top rope when it would be more devastating if he just ran. Like it's like he's hurting his own moves so that he could look cute. And Ninja Mac, I understand you don't need 4 back handsprings in order to get over to the top rope. I understand that, but at least it doesn't look like he's losing momentum as he does it. So that I like that Vikingo style, Ninja Mac style. That's a good. I think that's a good metaphor for him.
We may be wrapping up the era in which we get surprised that DOUKI wins the match.
Exactly.
You know what I'm talking about? Like this crowd, the commentators, even Kushida, all had that like, oh my God, he's gonna win. He won this match. Everybody had that shock look, but he's been winning more and more of these matches, and DOUKI's on the come up. And I think that 2024, 2025 are going to be good years for him.
I keep going back to how much respect DOUKI has in that locker room. And you hear it in backstage comments all the time. Kushida had the speech, and I've heard it from Hiromu. I've heard it from Ishimori.
Mm-hmm.
Guys who have been to Mexico who know how damn hard it was what DOUKI did over there. Just to not work for one of the major promotions, but to be a Japanese guy scratching out a living in Mexican independent pro wrestling for years. Not going to Arena Mexico, not even working all that much for AAA, if you want to call that a major promotion. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. You know, they've had their ups and downs. But just to scratch it out like that and never quite get there until, you know, this past year, he wrestled at Arena Mexico finally. So much respect for what he did. And so I think that really shone through. When guys wrestle DOUKI, they want to make him look good because they're all like, this guy is really good. And for years, no one saw that he was really good because just the key people wouldn't give him the shot. And so Kushida made him look like $1 million here, put him over with the finish. And of course, you know, he was told to do that. That's the booking. But as we know, there are ways to put somebody over and there's ways to lose to somebody.
Yes.
And Kushida put him over. Yeah.
This was a great match, and Kushida just felt like a renaissance after the last couple of years, and I'm glad he was in this tournament, and I'm glad he looked as good as he did.
Mm-hmm. I'm sad the show wasn't, but I'm glad Kushida was. That's. I wish they could have both been in there. But yes, so that was that one, and we moved on to Ishimori against Sho. So again, he's running the Bullet Club gauntlet at the end. Ishimori is. And he came into this one 5-2, Sho 4-3. So do or die time for Sho. And after the required ref bump, that's in their contracts, you have to have a ref bump. Yujiro started interfering, but it backfired a little bit on him, the ref bump, because Marty couldn't count the pin after Yujiro's interference. Red Shoes was eventually drug out from the back by Yujiro. I don't know what he was doing. He was probably warming up. Red Shoes has to stretch. He wasn't ready, though. But anyway, they did the thing with he got the bone lock on Sho. Yujiro rang the bell. Despite the referee being right in front of him and not calling for it, he still let go. It's eventually a low blow on Ishimori. But when he went for the package pile driver, Ishimori reversed that into a bloody cross, got the victory, eliminated Sho, and Ishimori moves on.
Clinical. This match was probably one of those matches that you're not going to want to seek out, not really going to want to make time for. It was more to make the math work, but it was fun. It was whatever. But if you're not big on House of Torture stuff, just skip this match. It's fine.
Yeah, that's fair enough, because this one, that was probably as House of Torture-y as a match got this tournament, really.
Yes. I mean, we have, let's see, do we have two more matches? No. Every show Red Shoes does, he does the last two matches of the card. So he should have done.
Sometimes just the one. Sometimes just the one.
But most of the time it's two. So I always think, well, he should have been out for this match anyway. So why isn't he ready yet?
Yeah, he always does the last one, but he only sometimes does the semifinal these days. Marty's been getting more semifinals. Actually, you know what? We should pay attention to that, Jeremy, because I noticed that it had been semifinal and final. Now they're starting to let Marty do some semifinals.
Okay.
We should pay attention. If Marty works the semifinal, does that mean we're going to get a long main?
Interesting. Sure.
Or are we getting a short main? Maybe we should start paying attention to that. Is that a clue? Is that a little tip? Are they tipping their pitches a little bit?
Strategy. I mean, Red Shoes getting up there.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, he is, right? I keep going back.
Marty is going to be the top ref at some point.
Yeah. Well, I keep going back to old matches just because I love them, and you know, they have a lot of the old Super Junior stuff on NJPW World, and I try to watch some of that, and it's interesting to see Tiger Hattori as the number one referee for a long time back in the 90s. Like, that was the guy that, Tiger's out here, something, this is the big match. So it is interesting to see that, because Red Shoes is just so associated with it. But of course, Red Shoes hasn't been around forever. But yeah.
You're absolutely right. We should check that out.
Okay. After that, we did have this match here between Hiromu and Drilla Maloney. So again, this is the thing. Would somebody blink? And it's Hiromu Takahashi and Ishimori. Ishimori moved on. So it was in serve was in Hiromu's court. Maloney, of course, worked the knee early, just like Robbie had. Maloney knew that was going to be a weak spot for him. As the match moved on, Hiromu had a triangle on Maloney, but Maloney overpowered him and power bombed out of that triangle. Then he hit a Drillakilla. Now, they protect that move a lot, and you could hear screams from the crowd when he hit it. Like, that crowd was just like, "Oh God, Hiromu's not going to win." You know, like they convinced the crowd with that Drillakilla that Hiromu was going to lose this thing, and then he got his foot on the rope, just barely. What a worker! Just a fantastic bit of timing on that. Got his foot on the rope. So again, protected the move. He didn't kick out, did he? But he did manage to escape. And so after that, he drug her. I thought this was clever too. He tried to cover Hiromu in the middle of the ring. Like, okay, I'll drag you over where there aren't any ropes. He tries to cover him, but Hiromu reversed that into a desperation crucifix. So Hiromu squeaks by Robbie Eagles with a desperation pin, takes the Drillakilla, manages to survive that, gets that crucifix again, just squeaks by. The story all year long has been Hiromu's in a slump. Now he's in the tournament. He's not even winning with his finishing move. He's just barely getting by these guys. It's interesting that I think they may have realized that we have put Hiromu on a plane so much higher than everybody else that we have to try to bring him back to the pack a little bit and make him look vulnerable. So he's just kind of squeaking by right now. And he did get there, though. And so that leaves us with Ishimori and Hiromu essentially in a match for first place. What did you think about this one?
Clinical again. I love Drill Maloney and I love Hiromu, but I never really felt like the ending was in doubt, even though they did everything in your power to do so. You know, we're at the elevated tension stage of this show of this tournament, and it's like, you know, Hiromu's going forward. He may not win the whole thing, but you don't have a tournament to go to Dominion and you don't put Hiromu if he's healthy. It's just one of those things that you do. So I really like this match, but it didn't end up being one of those matches that I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, just because the quality has been so high across the board on this thing.
They continue to tell the story about Hiromu's knee, though, because Maloney attacked him afterward, after the match, and then put him in a figure four around the post, or tried to. It didn't quite work out because Hiromu's legs aren't quite long enough to do that. It's a funny thing. Hiromu's kind of a short guy, so not kind of a short guy. He's a really short guy. So that leaves us with this. Now, of course, final day of block action is in about 12 hours. We have Hiromu Takahashi and Taiji Ishimori essentially in a battle for first place. So win and you're in, right? There it is. So as simple as
I have the lineup for tomorrow, actually.
Okay. You want to go through it first?
Yeah. So let's find that real quick. Here we.
But basically, we're down to 3 people. Is the point I'm trying to make on this? So
yes. So the first match of the night would be Kushida and Dragon Dia. Then we got Drilla Maloney and Ninja Mac. Then we got Robbie Eagles and DOUKI, who are both at 10. And then Ishimori and Hiromu. So this is a very
and Show gets his forfeit points that don't matter. As it turns out, he's already out.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So looking at this, Ishimori and Hiromu are in a match for first place. Whoever loses, it'll depend on tiebreakers and who else gets to 12 points. The key is going to be Robbie Eagles and DOUKI. Now, Robbie cannot advance. Here's why. If Robbie does get to 12 points, his issue is he has lost to both Ishimori and Hiromu. So he cannot advance. The only thing he can do is spoil DOUKI. DOUKI can advance, but only if one thing happens in addition to his victory. He has to beat Robbie Eagles, and then Hiromu has to beat Ishimori, because DOUKI holds the tiebreaker over Hiromu, but DOUKI lost to Ishimori. So there you go. It's a complicated thing there, but DOUKI can slip in with a victory by Hiromu and a win over Robbie Eagles.
Would you have DOUKI go in?
You know I'm rooting for it. You know I'm rooting for him. The issue is if he does, then Hiromu won't. And I think Hiromu's going to go because you got to sell tickets.
Wait, Hiromu and DOUKI both can't make it in?
If Hiromu... Well, let's see. If Hiromu beats... No, because the issue is DOUKI lost to Ishimori. They'd both be sitting on 12.
Bummer. So... Interesting.
Well, again, this is the block that probably didn't go as planned. right? Because of the injury to Akira. So we're looking at some interesting things. So the only way DOUKI can advance is if Hiromu is the one that is tied with him at 12. So, okay. So
what if they go to a draw?
No, I got that. Okay, pardon me. I just fumbled that. Ishimori has to win and DOUKI has to win. That gets DOUKI in. He would go above Hiromu. If Hiromu wins, then Hiromu advances. The issue is DOUKI cannot, because that would leave Ishimori behind at 12 points, and DOUKI would have 12 points. He lost to Ishimori head-to-head. So he cannot go in with him in that way.
What if there was a double count out in that match?
So that would make Hiromu that would put both of them at 13, and they both go through.
No, a double count out of 0, right?
Is it?
A draw is 1, a double count out of 0.
Well, that would be interesting.
It's not completely ruled out. I don't think DOUKI can get in, but are we just basically setting up seeding at this point?
Well, it may be. It may well be, but it may well be that if Hiromu just wins the thing. So the story might be, though, that DOUKI wins his match with Robbie, let's say he does, right? Just to build the drama. So now Hiromu has to win in order to advance. So the story isn't so much who's going to win the block. It's just, can Hiromu get through? So at that point, Ishimori's through, right? But, can he, who does he go in with? Does he go in with DOUKI on the tiebreaker? By beating Hiromu, he brings DOUKI with him.
So Robbie Eagles beats DOUKI, gets 12. Even if Hiromu loses, he still goes forward because he beat Robbie.
Yeah, Robbie's lost to both Ishimori and Hiromu. So he even if he wins his match with DOUKI, the only thing he does is spoil
He's
DOUKI.
Statistically eliminated.
Correct.
All right. I think we have our answer.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's just going to be to put pressure on Hiromu to win, and I think he will. I think they need Hiromu in the semifinals and maybe even the finals just to sell those tickets. I mean, they need to sell tickets.
So if Hiromu wins, it would be Hiromu versus TJP.
And he does.
Right? It would be Hiromu versus TJP and Taiji versus Desperado.
Oh, man, that's a hell of a semifinal. And then I still believe that if this is Desperado's year, and it kind of feels like it is to me, still does. This has been my prediction, that it does need to happen over Hiromu. And again, it's the main event of Dominion now. Remember how we talked at the beginning that this is the junior heavyweight finals. It doesn't have to be the two biggest draws because something else is going to draw the house. Well, now it's the main event. It almost it feels a little bit more like it has to be Desperado and Hiromu, right? We got to finish the story, but the whole thing is that Desperado, if he doesn't beat Hiromu to get there, that's still a piece missing, So I think that might be where they're headed.
They have a lot of options. That is clearly the biggest match they could do, but it might not be the best match they could do. It's interesting.
What Hiromu versus Desperado?
I'm saying more like for future plans.
Oh my god, that's one of my favorite matches in all of wrestling.
No. I'm not saying just for booking. I'm saying for future plans. Like if you have Ishimori and you have TJP in there, and you need to run a big angle or something like that. Like you're not going to run a big angle with Hiromu, and you're not going to run a big angle with Desperado, like changing the face of New Japan. Where they are in the lore right now is exactly where they need to be. So if it comes down to if something happens, it's probably going to be with one of the other guys, like a transformative moment at Dominion or something like that. I don't know. These are just things that I'm thinking about in my head because it is the second biggest show of the year. It is the main event. And if you aren't doing Hiromu versus Desperado, you have to ask yourself why.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, that's going on tomorrow at Korakuen Hall. That's that one. And then the semifinals will be Monday, June 3rd at Korakuen. So we will. Yeah, definitely. And then we had other news today, not news, but
real quick before we do that, before we wrap this all up.
All right.
Let's do our top 5 matches of the best of the Super Juniors before we move on to the next news.
Okay.
We got approached by John LaRocca to like, hey, it'd be really great if you could just give us 5 matches that you thought would be great to check out when all is said and done. So Stephen Conway and I, without talking to each other, both gave out 5 matches. And I will start with my first one if you want to start with yours after that.
Yeah, you can go ahead and we'll just bat it back and forth.
Yeah, all right. So my first one, and I just did it by order of night. There's no 1 through 5 or anything like that. But El Desperado versus Kosei Fujita on night 2 was my first match.
Mine too. Yeah,
Hey!
This match was brilliant. Tell them why. It was fantastic.
It was the young guy versus the veteran, and the young one was hungry. The whole deal. When the Best of Super Junior started this year, night 1 was fine, right? Like, it was good. But night 2 was when you're like, okay, we're in for a ride now. And it was this match, and there was another match on the card that I had as my top 5. And these were ones that was just like, oh man, these 2 matches, they're really making me happy. And so my second one also from night 2, it was Hiromu Takahashi versus DOUKI.
Me too.
No kidding.
I guess we should have talked about this in advance, but yeah,
fine. It just confirms to people that these are matches you should check out and see.
These 2 matches were cut above everything else, really. And I think, looking at my list here, the rest of my list, I think these were the best 2 matches of the tournament.
Entirely possible.
So with other contenders, but man, I love these 2. And DOUKI and Hiromu work well together. And of course, it ended with a DOUKI victory, which you mentioned we should stop being surprised. But it's part of the story is that DOUKI is climbing to his level and now starting to win these matches when before he would fall short over and over again. You peg the storyline Desperado and Fujita, but this is DOUKI's ascension right here to a level where it's no longer a shock. If he beats Hiromu Takahashi, it was brilliantly done.
That's the story of the tournament. Is you cannot be surprised when DOUKI wins anymore. Yeah. Night 5, Desperado versus Kevin Knight.
That one was fantastic. I did not have that one.
Good.
You're absolutely right. It's great. That's a great match, but I did have a different one. Yeah.
Yes. What we'll hear next one.
Kevin Knight and Clark Connors. I just thought that was just a dynamite match between 2 guys that know each other well, and had a terrific one there with a little bit of the subtext of the possible turn that they're teasing. But Connors' intensity with Knight's athleticism, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I see everything. I thought about it. It did not make my list, but I did have night 8, Desperado versus Clark Connors. We talked about this last week. That was the disqualification finish in which those 2 went exceptionally hard at each other, and just kind of had a more brutal match in the Best of the Super Juniors, and really made them feel like they were a cut above the rest of the guys in this tournament. So El Desperado, Clark Connors, night 8. What do you got?
All right, I'm going to move to night 3. Actually, I had one from night 3. Kosei Fujita again against Kevin Knight again. This was just another one here that was just a lot of fun. This is the one that drove me to talk about how Fujita and Knight could be having match of the year candidates if Knight stays in New Japan. I know that's a bit of a long shot, but I just said in a few years, like, these matches are going to be the highlight of major cards. It's not going to be just the Best of Super Juniors, but the idea of Fujita versus Knight, we're going to be talking about these are 2 of the best in the world, and it's a 20-minute war that's just all these highs and lows. This match was just an appetizer for that, what these 2 are capable of. There's no ceiling on it. We're looking at 2 that could absolutely be legends. I'm convinced of it. And I thought that this was another good example of what is to come, and probably even a better form in a few years.
Yeah, there's not much you can say other than they have arrived if they're not here already. They're there. Night 9, Hiromu Takahashi versus Robbie Eagles. We just talked about this match, how Robbie wrestled a perfect match and still lost. I'm a big fan of big story matches where, like, it's clear that the outcome of it is setting into motion something far bigger, and my ears pinged up on both a fantastic match and a story developing out of it. And I'm here for it. And I thought it was, I think it's going to be very important for the summer tone of New Japan.
My last one of the top 5, Desperado against TJP from the recent show there. I just thought it was really well worked. It was exciting. 2 guys. It had a lot of stakes. They wrestled like it had big stakes. And I mentioned it too when we were talking about the match, just how Desperado knows how to build that tension. And of course, TJP is perfectly capable of doing the same thing. So you're kind of living and dying with every big move and every near fall here. And I just thought that's one that's worth going out of your way to see between two guys who really know how to work a big match like this.
Yeah. Dunstan throughout the Night 5 Desperado versus Night match as well. And there are so many matches to watch. You can go to Cage Match, check out the scores. Those are pretty accurate. But if you wanted our top five, those are top five for both of us. Steven, what's that other news that you were going to share with us?
HENARE came back. Hey! HENARE had his return match. He looked terrific. He looked properly angry, of course, and he was wrestling a couple of members.
Head was in one piece.
Head was in one piece. He has a big scar on that skull now, but he wrestled Yujiro, he wrestled those guys, so he was blowing right through them for the most part. Didn't sell a ton, nor should he have. The whole thing was about that HENARE's back, looking strong, looking like a beast, and once again, it was very good to see him because that was a pretty scary thing what happened to him in that cage match where he was severed the artery there and just the idea that he was able to come back, able to wrestle well and get back in the ring. I was happy to see it. Zack Sabre Jr. also back after being off the rest of the tour for the most part. And good to see him. Of course, they're setting him up for big things. And they continue to emphasize the idea that Zack's eye is on the world heavyweight title and the G1 climax. And that's just music to my ears that New Japan feels like we're going to start emphasizing that.
So glad he's not interested in anything AEW. I just want the IWGP. I kind of think HENARE is winning that Never title.
He might.
I think they need to free up Shingo for more main event stuff.
I like that. And Venkin mentions just so many injuries these days. You're right about that. And Dunstan's calling it right now. At Wrestle Kingdom, Gabe versus HENARE, unification match for the strong and Never title. Let's do that.
All right, so we have an official match card for Dominion. So I'll share these with you real quick.
And then we're going to get to your questions, Dunstan. I promise we're going to do that too before we sign off. But yes, we do need to talk about what we have for Dominion. So go ahead. What do you got?
All right, we got the official match card of Moxley and Evil in the semi-main. We got Takagi and HENARE for the Never title. We got Ishii and Jeff Cobb for that TV title. And then the main event will be the winner of the Best of the Super Juniors. I'd imagine come Monday night, we'll be getting a bunch of information from New Japan about what the rest of that card will look like. And I am excited about that. And then we got Forbidden Door stuff to talk about. Ooh,
well, yeah. And of course, the rest of Dominion is the tag team title unification thing again. Phantasmo and Hikuleo, Chase Owens and Kenta, Yoshihashi and Goto, and then TMDK. So yeah, Bishamon, TMDK, Gorillas of Destiny, Bullet Club.
We're gonna have like 9 or 10 matches on this. So we only got about 4 or 5 right now.
And Uemura and Great Okan in some sort of KOPW nonsense too. That's also.
Is that actually at Dominion, or are they doing that at another show?
Yeah, that is part of the Dominion card.
Exciting. So we got a few more matches on the card. So do you think that IWGP title gets defended at Forbidden Door?
I don't know. Remember, the Forbidden Door is mostly an AEW production, and who the living hell knows what they're going to do with the IWGP title at Forbidden Door. Last time it was a middling mid-card match between Jack Perry and Sonata that meant absolutely zero. I don't particularly have a ton of faith that it's going to improve on this. So what do we have for Forbidden Door so far? But as far as probably, who the hell knows? It might be an eliminator again, which, by the way, as someone who is a licensed boxing official, can we just talk about the whole eliminator thing? Because
sure, I give you the floor.
They are misusing that term. An eliminator is when you have 2 contenders for a championship, and you're trying to decide which of them deserves the title. This happens in boxing, where you have 2 guys that are in the top 10, and they fight each other. And the idea is that we are going to decide who isn't one of the top contenders by having 2 of the top guys fight each other. An eliminator. You are eliminating somebody from contention for a championship for now. Of course, in boxing, you can always rebuild by getting a couple of wins. But the idea isn't that the champion is involved in the eliminator match. That doesn't make any sense. What the whole idea is that, like, say, contender number 2 and contender number 4 fight each other, and then whoever loses that drops down in the rankings, so that when we're trying to parcel out who the champion gets after his next defense, hopefully against the number 1 contender, then there's a guy standing there and we've eliminated the other one. You know, that's what an eliminator is for. It's a non-title. Why can't we say the word non-title anymore? Neither one. A title. It's either a title, an opportunity for. You can't say title match. Hopefully, Triple H changes that. But you're not allowed to say non-title anymore. It's an eliminator. I guess because it doesn't sound sexy, but eliminator does. Rant over. There you go. For the love of God, someone tell this to Tony. Why is it called an eliminator? That doesn't even make sense. If Rocky Romero were to win last night, and of course he wasn't, but if Rocky Romero won, what's eliminated?
So does that mean he never gets a shot at the IWGP title ever again, or that Moxley's reign of the IWGP?
I don't know. The only guy that can't is Cody right now, and that'll probably change someday too.
So
I'm tired.
When we got the eliminator notification that Rocky was wrestling Moxley, it made me think that there was going to be an IWGP title match at Forbidden Door because they're keeping that in play. In my mind, I think Naito is challenging Moxley at the end of Dominion for New Japan Soul. So if it were up to me, I think the play would probably be the Blackpool Combat Club with Claudio, Moxley, and Danielson versus Shingo Takagi, Naito, and Yota Tsuji. And you just do a 6-man match, get it ready for the New Japan Soul, and you make everybody happy because they all want to see those guys. That'll be a banger of a 6-man match. No one is going to worry about it, and you can make sure that you have time for the CMLL matches, the Stardom matches, and everything else. Just do a 6-man match. Don't worry about the IWGP title. It does not matter. Do not do it. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, so what is officially announced for Forbidden Door? Because Colin breaks a good point. We believe that Mercedes will defend against will face.
Those are the two matches that it appears that we have set. Is Swerve,
but not officially announced yet. Not officially announced yet. But all indications. We have
clarification of which title is on the line, if any at all.
Yeah, and then we know we're getting Ospreay versus Swerve, which will at least be a phenomenal friggin' match. That'll be a great match. Venkin is supposing that it's going to be Trent versus John Moxley, which
it will not be Trent versus John Moxley.
Okay.
Well, they already did that match. They're not going to like run back any matches that they already did, and they did that match in November last year, Moxley versus Trent Barrett on a New Japan show.
We have an expert. Scott is here. Scott Edwards from the 5-Star Joshi show. He said, I wouldn't count on much more Stardom outside of Mina and maybe one or two more wrestlers. I would expect 2 women's matches on the main show, probably one on the pre-show. Yeah, we think we're going to get Mina Shirakawa and Tony Storm, I believe, which would be fantastic to see. Tony get in there with a Stardom wrestler.
This is going to be a boutique show where there's just going to be a smorgasbord of matches where you're going to have a little bit of CMLL, you're going to have a little bit of Stardom, you're going to have a little bit of New Japan. But it's mostly going to be an AEW show with a little bit of branding on there. It's always been a driver that it's AEW. I was telling somebody earlier, this is like a comic book crossover where you have the main drivers and then you have the guest stars from all the other books where Spider-Man and Wolverine show up, but it's not their book. They're just there to pump the sales for a month. And then you like finish the story that you have with them. And then you just go back to your regular scheduled programming. This is what this is every year. It is a boutique show. This is no longer the biggest show in all of wrestling. Like that branding, all of it has disappeared. This is like for the AEW fan that doesn't know about all the other promotions and is curious about, the bigger world of wrestling. But if you are watching CMLL, you're watching Stardom, and you are watching New Japan, you will see the cracks in which what they are presenting to you versus what these promotions are presenting you kind of feel a little bit different from the messages that they're sending. And you just have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. So we're going to get that TNT ladder match. That's coming. There's going to be a title match between Swerve and Ospreay, which will be great. We're expecting Tony versus Mina. And that would, I guess, be the Mariah May Bowl. Mariah Carey's a singer. Mariah May's a wrestler. But the Mariah May Bowl right there, since Mariah has loyalty to both Tony and Mina. So, we're expecting that. And then there'll be some other things thrown in there. You mentioned there would definitely be some multi-person tag matches chucked onto the show. But I think that's going to be the meat of it. Now, the TNT ladder title match, I don't know who's going to be in that. I can't even really suppose who's going to be in that. Do you have any thoughts?
I don't think it matters. I think like Jack Perry is probably going to win that title. If not, it's going to be Until we know the stakes of what they're willing to commit to this match, like I can't speculate anything for an AEW show. You know what I mean? Like we're still a New Japan show talking about AEW, and I don't see a New Japan guy winning. And if as long as the New Japan guy doesn't win, you know, like I don't know. But I will be doing a post show for the Forbidden Door along with Kevin Ely from the Boom immediately after it. So if you do want spicy hot takes about the Forbidden Door immediately after, join us that night, and we will give you all of those.
Let's get to some of these other questions here before we sign off. We have a few more minutes. We have a little bit of time. Let's see. Well, we mentioned that who would represent New Japan in the ladder match for Forbidden Door 3. No idea right there. But here's one that I thought was in. Did you see the Nakajima tease, Jeremy? I think you did. I believe you sent it to me. So a tease for Nakajima. Do you think that little envelope he got was his envelope to the Despe Invitational?
If you guys are not aware of what we're talking about, Nakajima posted a 1-minute video this morning in which he is homeless on the side of the road, and a very expensive car with a very well-to-do man walks up to him and hands him an envelope and a lot of money. That's it. That is the tease. It is a 1-minute video in which he gets an invitation. And the only thing that I can think of that involves an invitation right now is the Despe Invitational. Now, there could possibly be something else that I am not aware of in Japanese culture and pro wrestling because I am woefully undereducated on all the nuances on that. But when I saw this, I thought, we may be seeing somebody at the Despe Invitational. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible, but yeah, I mean, I would like to see that. I mean, and Scott points it out here. My preference is for Nakajima to just go to New Japan. Me too. Something that would benefit both sides if he is not going to WWE. So there's rumors about that too. And Flaming Shark, by the way, just says I think Forbidden Door should have some tremendous wrestling, but not so much AEW versus New Japan as in all past years' likelihood. Yeah, it's starting to feel like it's a little more parallel instead of just one versus the other. Yeah, I mean, I think we might see that. Hopefully, it is a bit of a Nakajima dipping his toe in the New Japan water a little bit. I mean, this isn't specifically a New Japan show, granted, but I would like to see him there, and I would like to see him in New Japan for sure. My God, I mean, Nakajima in G1 or all that going forward. Doesn't have to be this year, but at any point, I mean, that just seems to be like the one thing he hasn't done. I mean, my dream guys, I've always said this about the G1, Kento Miyahara. I'd love to see Nakajima. I would love to see Claudio Castagnoli because I think he's a New Japan wrestler. He just doesn't know it yet. And those are some of my dream G1 guys there. So.
Who was the guy that Despe recruited for the hardcore match against Moxley last year?
Jun Kasai.
Feels a little bit Jun Kasai-ish. I'm not gonna lie.
Went and found him in the park. You remember that? They did that
in a park with his granddaughter. Was it his granddaughter?
I don't know if it was his daughter or his granddaughter. I'm not going to put that on Jim.
I think it was his granddaughter. And she's like, I'm here with the granddaughter. It's like, oh, cool. I brought you some food.
Scott just says, I talked myself into the invitation being for the G1, just his odd way of doing it. I would be curious who's in the car, though. Yeah. Who's going to be revealed as the mysterious envelope giver? It doesn't seem like a Tanahashi.
He was too nimble to be Tanahashi, I'll tell you that much.
If he had limped over there and taken 10 minutes to do it, it would have been Tana. Yeah, that's a good point.
There weren't any red shoes, so look at Umino.
Well, that'd be interesting if he was the emissary.
I'm just saying, I've seen Umino walk around and he legitimately wears red shoes at free time. So
yeah, what did you see him in San Jose? He was wearing like red Crocs or something like that.
Yeah, he was wearing red Reeboks. He was just or Crocs or whatever. But like he was just walking around and they were bright red. I was just like, God damn, man. God fucking damn. Love it.
He lives his gimmick, brother. Live your gimmick, brother.
That is fantastic. We are members of the Fight Game Media Network. If you like what we do here, please like and subscribe when you get the chance. We have many shows, including The Wrap, The Dynamite Show, the 5-Star Joshi Show, Popcorn and Pile Drivers, and many others. So please like and subscribe on this channel when you hear our show and you see it, and share it with others. Please and thank you.
Absolutely. I want to thank Scott Edwards for joining us here. That's pretty cool to have you along for this. I'm amazed you have time with Marty Gold also on the list now of things you got to watch. I have my Wrestle Universe subscription is actually just smoking, like, because it's just being used constantly right there. It's just there's little puffs of smoke coming up from my computer, but from all the wrestling I've been watching lately. So I'm pretty sure I still have a girlfriend. I haven't seen her in a few days, but we'll try to get back in touch with her before.
Brutal.
There's so much to watch right now, Jeremy. My goodness, it's just.
I was pretty burnt out from this weekend with the WWE show, and then Double or Nothing, and then watching the Best of the Super Juniors. There was a point I think on Tuesday where I was just like, I am just beat, and I was real glad that the Super Juniors tournament kind of slowed down a little bit this week. It was very helpful. Very helpful for me to. But we are like, as much as like Dominion is exciting and all these things, I was talking with somebody else today, and we're kind of in a dead zone in wrestling, until the G1 happens, until All In, until SummerSlam, we're all building towards these things. These are the big events. You got Money in the Bank, you got a couple other things, but like 2024 was an overdrive year, which every other weekend there was some exciting big show that you couldn't wait to talk about. And it's not like that this year, so it's a little bit different tempering of your mood.
All right. Well, with that in mind, I think we're about ready to wrap it up here. So next week, of course, we're going to be talking about the last day of B Block action, going into the semifinals, and then we will have our big Dominion preview. So don't miss next week's show. There's a lot to talk about there as far as the second biggest show of the year, really, in G1. I still think it's the G1 finals, Dominion. You could argue that one. I still kind of feel like Dominion has a little extra pop to it to me. So I'm looking forward to the second biggest show. I think it's a good lineup. I mean, Shingo versus HENARE. Come on, we can't go wrong here. And if we do get any combination of the four people that we suppose are going to be in the Super Junior finals, should be a great match. So we're going to see some great wrestling either way.
Yeah, I'm feeling good about Dominion. We're just not at a point where every single show that you see is just like, I am jumping off my couch. I cannot wait. And that's okay, because if you had that all the time, we would probably, not value it when it's gone like now.
Anything else to add before we finish this one up?
Nah, man. Take us out of here.
All right, there we go. So for Jeremy Finestone, I'm Stephen Conway. Thanks to all of you who listen to this podcast, who watch us on YouTube. We really appreciate you spending time with us. It means an awful lot to us that you take time out of your day to join us here on this show and talk New Japan Pro Wrestling. Don't forget to tell a friend, too, if you have any New Japan curious friends. For Jeremy Finestone, I'm Stephen Conway. This has been Speaking of Strong Style. We will talk to you again real soon.